some consumers obviously want to grab their coffee, put it in their Mr. Coffee maker, go take a shower and have a cup of coffee afterwards, and then go to work and never want to worry about where their coffee came from or how it was produced. And I think the sad part of that is that you're really missing out on a lot of the story of coffee.
Breakfast, first dates, catching up with an old friend, and even important business meetings all happen around coffee. Americans consume 400 million cups of coffee per day and on average spend $20 a week on it. Although the end product of coffee is ingrained in our culture and society, we don't even know about the entire journey that it goes through, or how we may even lose it.
Climate change is possibly the biggest issue on the table for the global coffee industry. Roasters, importers, exporters, producers, and even baristas all are concerned about climate change. 2 years ago, the Specialty Coffee Association of America commissioned a study into coffee production related to climate change's effect on coffee growth and the amount of arable lands available for coffee growth to get an idea of where we might be in 50 years. The findings really shocked the industry and was kind of a call to arms to do something. They found that in 50 years, it's expected that the global supply of coffee will have shrunk to half of what it is today, while the global consumption of coffee will have doubled. This could mean huge increases in the price of coffee. This could mean businesses closing. This could mean people's careers ending.
We can't negate the idea that our activities as humans may influence the climate. We produce a lot of CO2 emissions. We change a lot of features of air quality. We change things that absorb CO2, like cutting down forests. And so these kind of activities influence global climate. And with that, we see changing temperatures and an influence on what typically we have seen for generations. And this is pretty easy to plot over time. In particular, most plants are highly adapted to kind of their regions which they're grown. Probably even coffee even more so than, let's say, our typical agricultural plants like corn and wheat. They're fairly broadly acclimated, where coffee's found in a belt kind of that either surrounds the equator or subtropical regions. They're highly defined, and things that might change those temperatures and humidity greatly influences success, the yield, the quality, and the regions where coffee might be grown. Coffee probably grows best in 18 to 21 degrees Celsius temperatures, and so a 1 to 2 increase in climate temperature could greatly influence where this can be grown, either moving higher in elevations or in higher latitudes. And of course, that would influence what countries or communities now could grow coffee.
If you think about the surface area of a cone or a volcano or a mountain, and the higher you go up to combat temperatures that are above 96 degrees Fahrenheit, the less area you have. So eventually, if we keep going higher and higher and higher to combat these warm temperatures, then we'll run out of space to grow coffee.
Increasing temperatures not only affect the plant, but also invite unwelcome guests and diseases.
One major concern is the coffee borer beetle. It's an insect that bores into a coffee cherry and begins eating the seed, which effectively damages the seed to the point where it can't be purchased. We've studied and seen an increase in this beetle's geographic range, correlating to the rise in temperature over a period of years. The same is true of a fungus called coffee rust, and that's a disease that affects the coffee plant's leaves and destroys leaf matter, which prevents photosynthesis and affects the health of the plant to the point where entire trees might die.
We all think about the British or England being a tea drinking region, but in fact, way back when, England was a coffee drinker, but a fungus called the rust fungus on coffee basically decimated the coffee plantations of Britain, and so they switched to tea. So we have the same situation occurring now. Coffee rust is still a major problem on coffee production, and as climates and temperatures increase, climate change and temperature increases, we see other regions start to have a pronounced increase in coffee rust problem. It actually moves higher in elevation, it moves up the canopy,
Roya's been around for a really long time, and that's something that farmers have had to deal with for a long time. And we've come up with different hybrids to combat those kind of diseases. One such is called Catimor. Catimor is a variety of coffee that is mixed between Robusta and Arabica. It does a decent job of combating Roya, but I've seen crops of this plant ruined by a different variety of Roya. A lot of farmers now have realized that you need biodiversity, so you need to have a few different varieties so that if your Rabon's affected one year and your Catuai is affected another year, you have Catora and Ruby and all these other varieties that can actually help mitigate that.
Losing 1% of any crop is never good, but with coffee, it can be detrimental due to the long process of farming it. Coffee takes around 3 to 4 years to even get to a point where it will yield a good harvest. Once the plant is ready and picked, it is shipped to a washing plant and sent through multiple machines until the fruit is broken down to the bean shape we all know. Then, the coffee is raked dry in a process that takes anywhere between 7 and 21 days. It is then taken to a milling machine to be sorted, polished, and finally checked for any defects, and then packed up and shipped to the United States. Once in the United States, the seeds are roasted for 12 to 15 minutes, put into cooling, and then are ready to be made into coffee. Individuals in the coffee industry are finding ways to help farmers face all of these challenges.
A lot of roasters are switching to a supply chain model called direct trade. This is a solution on a small level that we can use to help. This involves roasters and coffee importers, green coffee buyers, visiting coffee farms directly to establish relationships with the coffee grower, the coffee producer. The reason that this is helpful is, besides the ethics of getting to know the human being behind growing it, roasters are able to help educate and fill in growers who oftentimes don't have access to the knowledge base that we do on ways they can help stabilize their farms against the effects of climate change.
It's just working with the farmer and making sure that they're informed and that they make good decisions when it comes to the environment, because we obviously don't want to work with people that are doing bad to the environment intentionally. We want to work with people that are wanting to learn, and us connecting them to information or people that have information to combat climate change and, whatever it may be. I think that's the best way that we work. We just work as connectors.
I mean, what is coffee? It's not quite the staple crop, perhaps, that corn or soybeans or wheat that provides the bulk of our carbohydrates. So we could think of coffee as a luxury crop. But in fact, it's the caffeine and coffee derivatives are in a lot of our food products. So it's more than just a luxury crop. It's more than just a cup of coffee in the morning. And in fact, it's the second largest traded commodity in the world behind oil, in front of natural gas, in front of gold. So it's a hugely important economy. We can't overlook that influencing coffee production could greatly influence economies. Part of having kind of stable economies is a stable source of income and a stable agricultural production. And when you start to tamper with regions that can grow certain commodities, then you start to influence social and political stability, and as well as economic stability. And that has could have great effect on the success of these communities. They aren't all big landowners who grow coffee. Many of them are small farmers, and so we're influencing the livelihoods of 25 million small farmer operations, and that has a pronounced effect, and we need to have responsibility in what's doing that.
Coffee farmers, many of whom have farmed coffee for generations, are suddenly faced with decisions that they've never had to make. As people on the other end of the supply chain, we think that that what happens to them won't affect us, but that's not true, and we see it in the migration crisis that's happening. We see it in the economic impacts of other countries. These things eventually will hurt. Climate change will eventually hurt us in much more drastic ways. Humans have caused this problem, and I think we can help fix it. We can keep it from getting worse. But it's going to take a total change of our perspective. For us, it's just a cup of coffee, and we'll feel it in ways that hurt, yes, but for tens of millions of people, growing coffee is how they put food on their table. It's the work that they know, and it's the work that they do. And in a lot of places, it's the only work available. We're talking about families, entire families of people working from farm to farm, collecting and harvesting and sorting coffee. And these people are looking at some pretty dire futures.
So what, as individuals, can we do to impact climate change? Well, one way is an awareness that it is a problem. The worst thing we can do is to denounce there's a problem or to negate the science that has clearly shown we're going through a period of increasing temperatures and climate change. So the worst thing you do is to deny that and pretend that science doesn't exist. The best thing, perhaps, is to be aware of it and to take precautions and measures that would help reduce our carbon footprint and our effect on the environment.
If we're not intentional in the way that we do things, then they're going to go away, and we're going to be left with our hands up in the air, like where did my cup of coffee go, or where did my fabric go? Or it's important because it will go away, but it's really important because there's people behind product, and that doesn't mean to stop drinking coffee. There's deeper roots to the problems, at least, than just buying coffee. It's not the solution. There's too many people. There's 30+ million people in the coffee industry, and we need to make sure that we take care of those people.